How to edit photos like a pro in Lightroom. I'm sure you've heard there's all kinds of software for editing photos. And the standards, Photoshop, Lightroom, Capture One, Affinity, but which one should you use and how? Well, I'm gonna tell you all about editing photos like a pro in Lightroom.
It's showtime.
Hello, I'm Mike Lloyd. I run a multi-six-figure boudoir studio here in Silicon Valley, California, actually not too far from Adobe. And I've got to photograph their executive team before, so maybe I'm partial to their products, but I've been using them since I got started and I absolutely love them, and I'm gonna tell you why. Firstly, what is Lightroom compared to Photoshop? I've heard people say Lightroom is like putting makeup on, Photoshop is like plastic surgery. You can do so much more with Photoshop, but there are also things you can't do with Photoshop that you can do in Lightroom. So I use Lightroom for two things: global edits and sometimes local, mainly global edits. I'll tell you what that means in a second. And file organization. So when I upload all my images into Lightroom after a shoot, I use Lightroom to call my images to mark the ones that I want to edit, then do my edits, and I do my IPS sessions using Lightroom because it's so easy to add images to different collections, different folders, mark which ones go to the album, which one are they dropping. Super easy. And I've got videos like that in the Boudoir Guild on exactly how I use Lightroom for my IPS sessions. But back to editing. Lightroom is great for global edits, which means you're doing some edit to the entire image as a whole, whereas localized edits are going through and fixing little tiny things here and there. But I'm gonna show you how you can do pretty basic local edits as well. So here is an image I took of my friend Amy. She is wonderful. This is for the posing book that you can get on the Boudoir Guild website. And this is straight out of camera. Zero work done to this at all. And I'll show you some of the cool things we can do with it in Lightroom. So to get started editing, firstly, make sure you're in the develop module up here. You can hit the letter D to get there, and that's where all the editing happens. Now I've got all my presets on this side, like my go-to boudoir preset. This isn't how I normally light an image, so of course my preset doesn't look great. But this is where I will save most of the things that I do over and over and over again. So what we're gonna do, I'll show you some of the local and the global edits I would do to this image in Lightroom. Firstly, I'm gonna look at the image as a whole, and if I hit the letter R, that brings up my crop tool. It's what allows you to either rotate an image, or I can crop it down into whatever dimensions I want. And if you look over here in the crop tool settings box, I don't know the name for it, you can choose your aspect ratio. Do you want to make this for an 8:10? Do you want to make it for a 5:7? Do you want to enter your own custom and make it for a 2:11.764? You can make it whatever you want, which is pretty cool. I'm going to go back to as shot. The other thing you can do, your angle tool, is rotate the image. Now, let's say you've got a horizontal line in the photo and you know that's your horizon. This might not be a great example. Let me pull up another one. Here we go. This line on the bed should be level. So what I'm going to do, go back here, grab my little level tool and draw it across what's level. Obviously, it doesn't look level here, but now it is. Boom. And I can move it over. Now we've lost a little bit of her hand. So in this situation, I would rather just leave it tilted a little bit and keep her hand in there. Okay, let's keep looking at the different things. We can adjust our color temperature, adjust, any color settings that you may have in there. I just leave everything there. I shoot everything on daylight settings for my lights, but if you need to adjust your color temperature, cool it down or warm it up, you can totally do that there. Also, you can choose daylight, you can choose cloudy. This is like setting your white balance in your camera. But I shoot with daylight balanced strobes, so I always just leave it at the same settings. Same with tint, I don't touch that. Some camera profiles will add in a little too much magenta, a little too much green. That's personal preference. You can adjust them how you want. Fun fact, I'm colorblind. I don't touch those, but I know what my lights produce. I know what my camera takes because I've done the work to calibrate this, and my clients don't seem to care. So I don't touch those. I leave them set for daylight. Then these are basically the functions of Adobe Camera Raw: your exposure, contrast. Now, if you're not familiar with the histogram, that's this chart up here, and it shows you the different values in the image from 0 to 255. Breaking down a histogram is a whole other video. But basically, the darkest parts of the image are the blacks, then the shadows. Then we have, they call it exposure, it's your midtones. Your highlights are up here, and then your whites. And that's what you're adjusting down here. So if you want to brighten up just the darkest part of the image, you can adjust your blacks. And you'll see what it's doing. It's moving those values from the dark area to the lighter sections of the histogram. And I can move the shadows over, just like that. Same thing the other way. You can darken or brighten your highlights, whatever you want to do, and the whites. And that is specifically adjusting different parts of your histogram. Then we get down to presence. This is, I think, of how gritty or how soft an image is. So if we zoom in on her face here, again, totally unedited, you can see all of her pores, all of the detail. Texture, this is a relatively new thing. It will, enhance the texture, I guess. I don't know how else to describe that, but you can see here. Now, some people might think, oh, cool, skin smoothing, but it's not skin smoothing because you're losing detail in the skin. Now, you can tone it down just a little bit, but the reason I would never just use that as a substitute for skin smoothing, because you lose the pore detail and it looks like one of those soft focus images from like 90s glamour shots. Then you have clarity. This is edge contrast. So while contrast is the space between the shadows and the highlights up here, right? We can bring them together or we can push them apart. Clarity is edge contrast. So it adjusts the contrast specifically on the edges of different color values between the shadows and highlights. I always boost my clarity a little bit. I think it adds a little bit of grit to an image, but I will over soften an image first and then add clarity. And I like the effect that gives me. That's a personal styling choice. Fun fact also, if you want to reset a thing back to its original value, just double click the name and it will put it back to its original value. Or you can just type 0 here in your slider. You're like, oh, I don't like that. You can just go 0, bring it back out. Then we get vibrance and saturation. Saturation, I would always recommend avoiding that because she looks like a Cheeto now. Whereas if you boost the vibrance, it's a more subtle way to enhance color without it looking overdone. Obviously, that is a personal preference. I prefer to adjust vibrance over saturation to keep it looking more realistic. Now, we could go through all the rest of these here. I would say focus on what you enjoy for your image. Because again, this is all stylistic. And I have more thorough videos on editing that you can check out. We don't need to go through every single one of these on here right now because this isn't about editing. This is about Lightroom specifically. But you can adjust your curves here, which is cool. And this little slider here, if you click that, I can just adjust the curves on the values wherever I'm clicking. And let's bring this back to 0. So I can just adjust the curves by grabbing a point on the whites up here or on the shadows down here. So wherever you're clicking with this little guy, it will grab a point on your histogram and adjust there. Let's put it back to 0. Same thing with your HSL sliders, hue, saturation, luminance, and your color values. You can choose to just adjust whatever color. If I want to drop saturation in the skin tones, I can just select that and it's going to leave the blues. It's going to leave the lips, make it look like garbage. Color grading. This is like split toning when you want the shadows to have a certain color tint and the highlights to have a certain color tint. You can do that. sharpening and noise reduction, they default leave settings here like this. I rarely ever touch those. I think if you want to do some more solid noise reduction, get something Imagenomics software, Nix software, and use some legit noise reduction. I also don't really touch sharpening, but you can see the preview here in the image of what this is going to look like. And if you click that little guy, you can choose, say, the sharpest eyeball and adjust your sharpening from there. But again, I usually leave it at the default settings. Then we get lens correction. This is super helpful if you're shooting a really wide angle lens, because you can choose Nikon 50mm 1.8, and it will adjust your distortion and your vignetting. If you're shooting a really wide angle lens and you get wide angle distortion, this will help bring it back to normal. And then lastly, I don't touch the transform. This is all work I'm going to do in Photoshop. But again, you're welcome to play with that. This is where you can add a little bit of a vignette. I never go on the light side unless I'm getting natural vignetting in my lens already. And then I can add a little bit of a lighter vignette on here to help counter that. But that's very, very rare. I will usually just darken the outsides a little bit to bring your focus into the middle. And I'm not making it look like a pinhole camera, just darkening the corners a little bit to, again, bring the focus into the center of the image. Then we get some more localized adjustments. So what we just went over are global adjustments. We're adjusting the whole image as a complete piece. These are more localized. So we're going to adjust little parts of the image specifically. So we've already used this. This is our crop tool here. The next one over is spot removal, and you can use the letter Q to trigger that. So I'm going to zoom in on her face here. And we can see there are makeup. Let's go into 200% here. You can see little makeup flecks on her skin. So we're going to select the spot removal tool. This is like the content aware, the patch tool in Photoshop here in Lightroom. So I can click on that and you can select where to sample from. And then I'm going to do that little spot, and then I'm going to do that spot, and then that spot. And then let's just do these over here while we're at it. And you can go back later and adjust where you wanted to sample from. And now all these spots are gone. So that's pretty darn cool. For basic stuff, I can do it in Lightroom here. For more advanced sort of adjustments, I'll take it over into Photoshop. All right, the next one, red eye removal. Well, obviously her eyes are closed. We don't have red eye removal, but same, you select the eyes, you can adjust your settings from there. They also have a function for pets because doggos always get the red in the eyes from the flash. Okay, then we get gradient tools. I'm just gonna go with exposure to show you what this one looks like. So you can see the top of our gradient here, significantly darker. You can also adjust the bottom. Now this could be cool if, and fun fact, you can just drag the little sliders here to rotate them, do it however you want. I don't want two. I only want this one. But let's say the bottom of my image is way too bright. I don't want that white sheet to be creeping up. I can go ahead and add this gradient to darken the bottom of the image a little bit. And that's with the letter M if you want the keyboard shortcut. Another cool thing about these, the little silver dot that appears, this will show you each instance of that tool. So when we go back to our spot correction, you can see all the little dots represent each of the individual adjustments we did. Same thing with here. If we do several gradients, it will show us a dot for each one of them. And then you can select that. You can go back and adjust it later on. You can hit the delete key and delete it and just select it. Also, if you just mouse over it and wait for a sec, it will give you a red mask on the screen that shows you the area affected by it. And you can do any of these basic adjustments here with that sort of this gradient mask. Let's delete that. And then the next one, close that, is, come on, I'm trying to get my little tooltip to pop up, your radial filter. And it's basically the same thing as the gradient, but it's a circle. And you can adjust the feather here. Do you want an actual circle? Do you want it more like this? This could be a good thing if, let's say, the entire image is way too dark. Here, let's just brighten this up. That looks like garbage. But if the whole image itself is too dark, let's say the image is a bit underexposed. I kind of like how underexposed the rest of it is, but I want some more light on her face. I can grab this, move this over her face. And if you don't get the circle right the first time, you can adjust it later. And, let's say I want to make it more oblong here to be face sized. I can do that. Notice when I'm adjusting the brightness, it's the outside of the circle. You're like, but that's weird. I wanted the inside of the circle to be adjusted. So you go down to invert, and now we're adjusted there. So now I can just brighten up her face a little bit. Now we've got underexposed area. Obviously, this doesn't look stellar. I'm just showing you the techniques that you can use. I would much rather just get it right in camera with good lighting. Okay, so back to our original image. The last thing is it's basically a brush adjustment tool. So where the gradient lets you draw a gradient, the radial filter let you do a circle or an oval. This will let you just accidentally hit the emoji key, bring up a brush tool. There we go. Let's do that so you can see. And you can adjust your size of the brush. You can also do it with like a click wheel or with the bracket keys, just like you would adjust a brush in Photoshop. And if you hold down the Shift key and adjust those, you will adjust the feather. So I can make it more of a hard line there, or I can make it super soft, either way. And the letter K is your shortcut there. Same as before. If I make multiple adjustments with multiple brushes, you can see a dot of each instance that I've done this adjustment. And if you mouse over them, it will bring it up in red as to where that one is affecting. So I'm going to delete all of these and show you an instance where I would use this brush. Let's say I want to knock down the white sheets because they're a little too bright and I want a little more contrast. But if I go here and reduce my highlights, I'm also losing my highlights on her, and I don't want to do that. So I will grab my brush tool and I'm just going to paint over the areas I want to adjust. And you can let go of your mouse. You can click different areas. You don't have to do one continuous brush stroke, which is cool because you can add and remove things later on. And let's say you accidentally, go over her knee. I'm going to go down to the erase brush here and erase that brush off of her knee. Then when I want to add again, I'm going to go back to A. And you can have different settings for A and B. I usually just do one setting per incidence of this adjustment. Now watch, as I'm just adjusting that, I can just do the areas I've marked with my brush. Now this isn't as precise as Photoshop when you can use a lasso or make like actual legit selections. But again, if you just need to do very basic adjustments like this, it's a fantastic way to do that. And now if I've decided every one of my images is going to have this same sort of look, I can come over here to my presets, I can click plus, and I can create a preset that I can then use over and over again. And if I don't want to do a preset, but I want to apply all these same edits to the next several images, I can select the next few images and Command Shift S or Control Shift S on a PC, and you can synchronize your settings, which means it will take whichever of these boxes I check, which are all based here in the develop panel you just did, everything from your cropping, your local adjustments. These are your brushes and your gradient and radial filters we've used. Everything that you could have possibly just done, synchronize. And now it will apply those same functions, those same edits to these images that you've selected. So if you have a row of images, you always choose the first one, synchronize, and it will synchronize it with every image afterward. So this is a huge time saver. Let's say I do one set with blue gels on my images, and then I do another set with white lights, and then I do another set with red gels. I'm not going to do the same editing and color profiles to each section. But if I just edit the first image in each of those sets, I can then apply the settings to each of those sections and really speed up my workflow instead of doing the individual edits on every single image. Okay, so last thing I want to go over is using plugins. What's cool about Lightroom and Photoshop is there are other programs that will allow you to edit their images natively in Lightroom or Photoshop. So Portraiture is one of my favorite programs. I use it for all my skin smoothing. So what you can do, edit in. Now I can send this directly into Photoshop, and then when I save it in Photoshop, it'll come right back into Lightroom. You don't have to open and close things. It automatically will adjust your settings here based on whatever you did in Photoshop, which is super cool. And anything else that you've ever used to edit images here, you can add in, whether it's, again, Nik software or just any of the Imagenomic plugins. So let's do edit in Portraiture 3. That's the skin smoothing one I use. Now, these are NEF files, which is the Nikon RAW file. And the skin smoothing softwares don't run on RAW files. They need a different type of image. So what it's going to do is create a TIFF file to edit instead. Now, if this is already a TIFF or a JPEG, it will let you use the original, which you're like, I don't know if I want to do the original because then I can't go back. So then you would select edit a copy, and it will duplicate your image and then let you edit that. So I'm gonna select that only one that I can use. So you can see what it did down here. It made a duplicate of my image. So here's the photo. You can also run this on multiple images, which is what I do. I'll have 100 photos from a shoot. I'll select all 100, and then I'll let Portraiture run. Takes about 40 minutes to do, but 40 minutes of me going to have lunch or do something else while it smooths all the skin, huge time saver. So I'm gonna zoom in so I can see her face a little bit better. And I can go through and adjust the amount of skin smoothing I want. Now, when you do this and you click on it, you can see the before and then you let go and it's the after. Or you can go here, however you want to compare those. I usually prefer to click and do before and afters. I'm gonna go back to normal. Now, again, I like to over smooth things and then add a little bit of clarity to my images. That is my personal preference. You can adjust however you want. I'm gonna drop that down just a little bit more. That doesn't look bad. And you can see again, the before and the after here. Let me pull those up. Pretty big difference. Then I'll click OK. All right, so now we have this new TIFF file with our skin smoothing. We'll zoom in on her face. That looks pretty darn good compared to the original. And I would usually do this first. I would run the skin smoothing software before I went in and adjusted anything else. And then again, maybe I'll throw my desaturation preset on there. Let's drop the shadows down. Darken these highlights a little bit more. Obviously, this is a very sloppy brush application here. Okay, so let's say you've made a ton of adjustments here and you're like, I really don't like this. I want to start over. If you go to your history settings, you can jump back one step at a time to get back to your original. Or what you can do is just right click on the image in the film strip, go to develop settings and do reset. And it'll take you back to the very original starting place with this image. And then you can start all over. So there you go. That is how I edit photos in Lightroom. and I'm a professional, so this is how to edit photos in a Lightroom like a professional. Be sure to check out other videos in my channel to learn more about how to market these images and then sell them so you can make money from them, quit your 9-to-5, and live a life of a thriving photographer. And if you want more step-by-step walkthroughs, very detailed editing between Lightroom and Photoshop, head to boudoirguild.com, and I have very thorough step-by-step walkthroughs in the membership site there. You are amazing. I'll see you inside.